Hi, everybody. I'm Kraig Kann. Right now, on this edition of Tracks to Success, meet a man of fairways, fast breaks, fair balls, and faith. One of sports broadcasting's most knowledgeable, versatile, and personable, who's risen from a one-time internship to big-time, big exposure network viewership. A Major League Baseball announcer at the local level, climbing all the way to the highest level, the NBA and NCAA's March Madness. And one of the biggest turning points of his career involves calling golf. We'll talk about that. If you love sports, you've heard him. Now you'll get to meet him. Brian Anderson. His inspiring story of success starts now.
Welcome to Tracks to Success. This is the podcast that brings you inspiring people and their inspiring stories, how they found their way to the top, and how their path can help you do the same. Here's your host, network broadcaster, C-suite executive, best-selling author, speaker, and entrepreneur, Kraig Kann.
Well, there he is. Brian Anderson, great to be with great to be with you. You know, it's not easy to find time in a guy's schedule when the guy's schedule's got so many different things on it. How did we pull this off?
I mean, your relentless nature that served you well your whole life finally paid off. I'm not technically on an off day, but you could kind of say it's a travel day, so it's sort of an off day, half an off day.
Yeah. But what people don't know, if they're watching this right now, you are in your house, but you're in your studio.
Yeah.
Tell everybody what you're doing. I mean, this is a great setup you got going. I mean, you look very official.
Well, I appreciate that. This is courtesy of the pandemic. So this is my pride and joy here. During the pandemic, I had just signed with NBA 2K to do the video game. That was in 2020. So the first year I was on the game was 2K21, but you know what happened in March of 2020. So we were starting to record about that time, and man, it was like, we got to shut down operations. We can't record you. I'd done probably 3 to 5 hours of recording. And so they said, well, the pandemic, so we can't do it. And I said, I have a technical background. I came up prior to my television days in front of the camera. I worked as a cameraman and an audio tech and graphics. I said, if you'll just ship me everything, I can build out. I had nothing to do anyway, so I can build out a studio in my basement. This is actually like a storage area in my basement. And I told them, they didn't believe me. And I said, I can build this out. Trust me. And they sent me, I think it was like 15 giant boxes of stuff. And I built it out. It took me about 2 weeks. And then we started recording. And then if you remember, the NBA went into the bubble in Orlando later that summer.
Yeah.
I actually built out another, so I got a hotel room because no one was allowed in there in that sequence, in that whole situation there. So I got an extra hotel room courtesy of NBA 2K, and I built out a studio for me, Doris Burke, and Chris Webber to go record NBA 2K. We saved NBA 2K21.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because it was during the pandemic. We were the only ones working. So it was really cool. Now I've been in here. I do all my voiceover work down here. Obviously all the podcast, and I just finished an NBA 2K session. 2K26 will be out soon, and you can hear all of that, and you'll know it's come from right here in my basement.
There you go. That's a great promo. Let's start with the topic of a busy schedule, and being a broadcaster at your level is tough enough. At any level, it's tough enough. One sport, one team, that's hard. But you do many sports, you do, multiple teams that you have to learn and a travel schedule. Is that a challenge that has become easier or more difficult as you've gone on? And do you love the fact that you do so many different things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would not be comfortable doing just one sport. I didn't grow up playing one sport. I grew up playing multiple sports and, the seasons of the sports calendar. Like,
Hmm.
it really bothers me now that all these AAU coaches and these programs are demanding that we just focus on one sport with our kids, because I never did that, and I couldn't do that as a broadcaster. So for me, it's very natural. I When I started, I was saying yes to everything, everything I could. I needed money. I needed to figure out how to make a living doing this. So um, whatever was being offered, I took. And so I've kind of maintained that idea all
Yeah.
these years later. So it really hasn't been a challenge to me. I'd say when you shift sports, the language, the vocabulary, the way you like your cadence
Hmm.
changes, and from an artistic perspective, you want to make sure you're saying the right things in the right moments, but also, you're with your analyst, for me anyway, because I'm on television, and I never work by myself. I'm always trying to serve that individual and where they want to go, whatever their highway is. And I'll certainly lead on news topics or whatever the subjects are in front of us. But, it's mostly just me finding out where the analyst wants to go, and then me finding a way to get that analyst there. So the
Yeah.
travel part of it is actually beneficial to the preparation part of it. So, you're always trying to mix all the elements of what we do. And I find that, jumping on an airplane with headphones on is the best time, now that there's Wi-Fi on airplanes, to do
Yeah.
your prep. So there's a little bit of trust involved too.
Sure.
So, if I'm preparing for a game, I'm home, and I want to spend time with my wife and my daughter, my family. But and I know, like, there's this thing out there, this test. It's very similar to taking a test, and I know it's out there, but I know I have blank amount of hours to prep, and I don't always rely on the airplane Wi-Fi. I kind of package up my own research that I don't necessarily read right away. I just shove it in my laptop, and then I'll go get it on the plane. So I try to take those moments. I grind like
Yeah.
crazy the second I leave my house. In the car, whether I'm listening to podcasts or learning about different teams or picking up on local markets or watching games from those teams, or getting into the bookwork part of it.
Yeah.
And so really it's that kind of works hand in hand. So I don't mind being on the planes because it allows me to prepare for my games.
I want to get to so many different things here, and let's start with this. This podcast is called Tracks to Success. Okay, so let's talk about your track. You grew up in Texas as a kid, and I've interviewed Tarico and Joe Buck, and I my parents gave me a microphone and a tape recorder when I was 8 years old. I knew that's all I ever wanted to be, was on TV, and I practiced games in my room with the door closed. Did you know you wanted to be a sportscaster? Did you know you wanted to travel on planes and call games at an early age?
No, not at all, actually. I wanted to play. My older brother played in the major leagues, and he's
Hmm.
very influential. He's still in the game. He's a assistant to the general manager with the Texas Rangers. He's been in the game since he was 22 years old, as a professional, when he signed out of college. So for me, I was 5 years younger, and I thought I was going to be good enough to play as well. I was a scholarship athlete to play baseball in college. It was a small college, but we were the number one team in the nation. There was a number of players drafted out of my school and out of my conference yearly.
St.
So
Mary's.
St. Mary's University, yeah, in Texas, in San Antonio. So that's kind of really where it started, because as I got into probably my junior year, actually, freshman year, all about playing, wanting to play. I was focused on being a player, training, and all of that. Sophomore year, my sophomore year, I started 0 for 26 at the plate, so that was probably a good sign I was not going to go to the next level. It's hard to recover from 0 for 26, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
And then junior year, I was like, all right, I gotta think about a plan B here. And we shared the field. We leased our field to the minor league baseball team, the San Antonio Mission. So I was working on the grounds crew there. I was staying in the summers. I got a job with the cable company, not installing cable. We actually had the studio part of the cable company. That was the big cable company back then, Paragon Cable, and they they did things like the mayor's forum and city council, but they also did the Spurs preseason package. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I got in from a technical side. I was a handheld camera guy. I did audio and tech. So for me, it was just literally about like, be where your feet are, get paid today so you can keep going tomorrow. That was the idea. And so I did that through college and played baseball. But once I started to get closer to graduation, and, we went to the NAIA World Series my senior year. That was a great ride. Um, but after that, then the reality hit. And I had all these kind of internships lined up that I had been doing already. So I just stuck with it. And now the Missions, the minor league baseball team, said they needed some help from a technical perspective. And I said, now let me back up 2 seconds. Sorry, this is long. But prior to that, my brother was coming up through the minor leagues. So
Mm-hmm.
every year I would go squat down for weeks at a time with him, wherever he was, Greensboro, Chattanooga,
Mm.
Iowa, wherever he was. I would just go
Mm-hmm.
squat down with him while he's playing. And I found myself like going up to the radio booths to just hang out, with the radio announcers, guys like Kurt Bloom and Larry Ward and Howard Kellman and these guys. So anyway, I kind of like was formulating this idea that, man, I think I could do that. And then I would go back and I would play another season in college, and I was calling play by play from the dugout. Or when I was catching, I would like call. I remember we had this one umpire. He loved to hear me call play by play. And I would, after the guy would leave the box and he'd ground out, I'm saying, it's a ground ball to short, and he got it
Oh
and
my
away.
God.
And so total bit, it was just a bit, nothing more. But, even my head coach was like, BA, call some play-by-play, because I didn't we played doubleheaders in college, and I would only catch the first game of the doubleheader, never the second. And so I would sit on the bench and, I would call play-by-play. So that started to become a thing as I'm playing. But then when I graduated, um, the missions needed somebody to kind of be a technical guy. And
Mm-hmm.
my whole arrangement with them was, all right, I'll do that and I'll set up your new scoreboard system and I'll set up your click effect system. Um,
Crazy.
but I need 3 innings of play by play on the radio on AM 680 KKYX. And they were like, yeah, okay. So what? Who cares? No one listens to the games anyway. So that's how I started. That's kind of when I'd say my junior years when I started formulating the idea. But honestly, I was 2 years into calling minor league baseball before I even thought that I would do this for a living. Honestly, it
Mm.
was a hobby, and I was throwing batting practice. I threw the first group of BP every day. The Dodgers paid me $25 a game to throw batting practice. Louis Tiant was our pitching coach, and he didn't throw.
No.
Yeah, El Tiante. So the late great. But he didn't throw BP, so they needed somebody. And so I threw BP and I caught bullpens because I was a catcher. I came straight from the field.
Yeah.
So I'd be down there catching Chan Ho Park. And that's probably the biggest name I caught. But yeah, he came up through the Dodger system. So I was in heaven, man. I was like around a minor league baseball team, traveling with them, throwing batting practice. I had a locker in the coach's office with a uniform. And and I did 3 innings, and I wrote the Texas League newsletter, and I did the game notes. So I'm like,
Oh my
this is a
gosh.
cool job. I'm 22 years old, but it was about age 25 when I started like, okay, I got to get serious.
Mm.
I've got a wife, a baby on the way. I got to bear down now. So I wish I could say I grew up wanting to be a sportscaster, but that's not the case.
I was a high school catcher and I wasn't a great one. And I thought I could always call pitches really, really well until I was coaching my son's all-star team when he was 10 years old. And in Orlando, in the area, his team played against an all-star team with Bo Bichette. And I figured, all right, let's test him with a slider to start, and then let's give him a fastball. Had this great left-handed pitcher. My son was a catcher and a first baseman. And I called a fastball to Bo Bichette, and he hit it so far over the center field wall. We lost that game 10-3. I said, all right, I better start calling more junk for these kids because we all know where he ended up. this is good stuff already. I can already tell, Mr. Storyteller, that I'm going to get short on questions and long on answers. So let me move into this then, because I know about the San Antonio Missions. I know about sideline stuff for the Spurs and all of that. Um, Minor league ball for ESPN, little league, all that stuff. But there was a transition, and that's where you and I really met, which was Golf Channel. And I was doing play-by-play, and then I shifted to studio, and you came in, and you were doing play-by-play, calling a variety of tours. My question is, why golf? Why did you make that transition? What was it about that really, I think, sets you into another level of I can do so many great things and be really good?
Yeah, that was a that was a huge moment in my career, and I want to say this with all sensitivity, but when you are in the minor leagues like I was for 9 years, and the last 5 years of that window, I was on Spurs television as a sideline reporter. So I was,
Mhm.
I was starting to get some traction. I was calling play by play. I was doing Big 12 women's play by play on television. So, I was doing some stuff, but it was all piecemeal, and you didn't know month to month or, every 6 months what it was going to be like. So when the Golf Channel came around, and I'm telling you that part of it because I didn't make enough money to survive. So I worked at a golf course, and
Mm.
I would go in the baseball off seasons for 5 years at Golf Hyatt at the Hyatt Hill Country in San Antonio. And I didn't even play golf till I was 20, but I love the sport, and I really got into the sport at that time. So this is like 96, and I didn't start with Golf Channel till '03. So think about this
Mhm.
transition of me working in the golf course every offseason, doing minor league baseball, doing the Spurs, all that stuff, just piecemealing it together, whatever I can to make ends meet. But after 5 years and being in it, and I did all the announcements, and I ran corporate tournaments, and I was just embedded in the game, and I was actually getting a little bit better too. Um, and then this company came through, and they it was a weird deal. I don't even know if they survived, but it was a promotions company, and they would sit you up in a van, and you would call golf shots for all 144 players that came through. Same
Mm.
hole, different players. It was only a marketing thing, and I did it. And it was actually pretty fun. And I'm making up stories about all these guys, this corporate tournament coming through, and I'm in this van for 8 hours calling these players. And after that, everybody kept saying like, "Man, that was really good. Like, you should do golf." So 2000, the Golf Channel opportunity came up, and I didn't get the job. But the guy, Tony Tortorisi, who had seen my demos in 2000, came back around in 2003, and he goes, "Now we have an opening, and we'd like a little more of a mainstream voice." And again, I was doing basketball and a lot of baseball, and so that's how it started. Like I needed the money, like I needed the job. That was my first like real job on a national cable system. I
Yeah.
mean, we didn't get many viewers back then. It was a very niche audience, but it was the perfect place for me to come in and just to figure out a new sport, like a real televised sport that I had no idea other than me sitting in that van calling nine
Mhm.
irons on a par three. I'd never really done anything like that. So I had to really buckle down, and I took a bunch of lessons because I wanted to get better and learn the game from the inside out from an athlete's perspective. I did. And, I was like a 15 index when I hit the Golf Channel. And by the time I came out of there 4 years later, I was a scratch player because I'm spending every day, I'm immersed in it. I'm with Kurt Byram and Jerry Foltz and Kay Cockrell and Michael Breed. That was kind of our crew, as you know. And,
Mhm.
they took me in and taught me how to exist in the golf ecosystem, exist on television in golf, and still great friends to this day. All those guys, still some of my best buddies. And anyway, that was the moment that I realized like I can do some hard things, but there's a lot of preparation, a lot of effort that goes into
Yeah.
it. But it gave me the idea that you can expand and you don't have to be afraid, and so much so, just to fast forward, the same process just went down for me because my network captured the rights to Roland Garros, the French Open, and they wanted me to do it, asked me to do it. I was very hesitant, but I did it, and I did the same exact build-up process as I did when I took the Golf Channel job. I'd never called tennis before I did a Grand Slam event last May in June. And then ultimately, like one of the most epic finals in the history of Grand Slam tennis between Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, won by Alcaraz in this great comeback. So I did the exact same thing that I did when I took the Golf Channel job to build up and learn and prepare for that. I did the exact same steps. So for me, it just opened up this world of just say yes and figure it out. And, the ideas are still the same. The philosophies are still the same. The way I call it this 2-track system where track 1 is the ball in play. The track 2 is what you say in between the ball and play. Some of those are wider in other sports than they are in baseball or golf, but it's basically the same philosophy.
Tracks to Success is proud to have the support of Ahead, true innovators in premium headwear. For more than 25 years, Ahead has been outfitting golfers and supplying headwear for the game's most prestigious events. Head over to aheadshop.com and explore their incredible collection of major championship golf hats. And don't miss their lineup featuring your favorite college teams. If you're looking to dress for success, Ahead is the perfect brand for you. So think ahead and look for it at pro shops and special events across the country. And how about this? For listeners of Tracks to Success, Ahead is offering one of its biggest discounts ever. Visit aheadshop.com and use the code TTS30. That's TTS30 to get not 20% off your purchase, but 30% off. That's right, 30% off with code TTS30. Ahead, the finest in headwear and the official headwear of the Tracks to Success podcast. Available now at aheadusashop.com. We're talking with Brian Anderson, Turner Sports. He's also the voice of the Milwaukee Brewers. And really glad to have Ahead sponsoring this podcast, BA. I got 2 hat colors for you. I'm going to send you one so you can have purple or white, okay?
I love it.
All right. So we'll figure that out later, but really glad to have them as a partner. I want to get back to this. I know you left to go to the Brewers, okay? And I know much of that story because I was there at Golf Channel. I don't need to dive into that. You've been phenomenal with the Brewers, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. In my workshops that I do for Kann advisory groups, working with corporations, working with organizations about leadership, communication, presentation, etc., one of the big words I use is how do we become sticky, memorable, having skills that make people attracted to you and make you memorable to an audience. What was it about you? What's been the sticky factor for Brian Anderson in your mind that's made you a magnet to all these opportunities?
Well, I don't think of it that way, obviously. So that's probably one thing. I do feel like I've had this philosophy from the moment I started. It's more of an athlete's philosophy, and I took a lot of from the baseball perspective. And at Golf Channel, I thought I was on a track to do more, better, bigger, and was told I was on that track, and then I wasn't. And then it wasn't like I got let go. It was just, hey, we're just not quite ready for you to go to this next level, this next track. And, that hurt me hard. And it was something that still sticks with me. But at the same time, the idea was, or the notion was, all right, well, how can I change the scouting report then? If you're a scout and you're scouting a baseball player and you lay down what you think the assets are of that player and what some of the problems are with that player, what can the player do to change that scouting report? And so I took a real hard look at that, and I just tried to change some things. I was always striving, always wanting to get the next thing, but also be in the moment. I don't want to speak like too philosophically, but for me, I was probably too deep in the moment, the day to day. How can I be better today? How can I focus on this? What I did not do, I never dealt with agents. I
Mm-hmm.
never dealt with executives really. I never picked up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just didn't play that game because I didn't even know that game existed. And I was just happy to have that job in the first place. But, when I didn't get elevated, and which kind of then spurred me on to change course, eventually leading me to the Milwaukee Brewers. I didn't really do any of that. So being a broadcaster is not just about showing up and doing the sports. And I'm not saying you need to go kiss up to executives, but you should know them and they should know you, and you should be able to express to them um, things that you like or don't like, or things that you think could be
Mm-hmm.
better. And if they don't receive it, that's fine. But I never did that.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say was I kind of changed that philosophy of how I want to do this after that. And that goes into a very humble manner, whereas I'm just trying to serve every
Mm-hmm.
day. So I'm trying to serve my analysts, trying to serve the subjects we cover, the athletes, the league, or in this case, the tour, and then my bosses, And so how do I know what they think is important? Um, and I think I felt like they always kind of saw me as minor league. I was doing the nationwide tour back then, which is Corn Ferry. I had done minor league baseball. They never really saw me as like an A-lister or a frontline guy. And when when we got the tour, they went with other people who they felt like were A-listers. And
Yeah.
so to me, I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, well, how do I change that perception of myself? So that I don't know if that answers your question, but that was a real like pivot in my career where, okay, let me go out into the marketplace. Let me see where I stand from other people. And I'm talking basketball, college basketball, NBA, uh,
Mm-hmm.
tennis, um, other golf entities, baseball. So I was just like out there saying, okay, what do you think of me? What do you think of me? I need honest opinions. And I'm not taking it hard. I'm taking it like an athlete would or a golfer trying to fix a
Mm-hmm.
slice. I'm
Sure.
trying to hit the
Sure.
ball straight. So I think that was the perception. Well, you're just a normal average broadcaster, average sound, average look. You deliver, but you don't. There's nothing memorable about you. And for me, that's really where it changed. Where I said, all right, the next job I get, and it turned out to be the Milwaukee Brewers, I'm gonna let it fly. Because when I was at
Mm.
Golf Channel, I was very conservative because we
Mm-hmm.
kind of had to be.
Sure,
Like
you
you
did.
you lived it too. It was like we're doing golf for a niche
Mm-hmm.
audience. You can't be screaming your head off at a golf tournament. It's very conservative. Just get from hole to hole and tee up your partner, Kurt Byram in this case, who was amazing,
Yep.
and move
Amazing.
on and like go to the next week, next show,
Yeah.
next. And so for me, when I got the Brewers job, I remember like the first guy I met, and I already kind of knew him, but believe it or not, I was in the urinal my first game, and Vin Scully walked in, and Vin Scully pulls up next to me and goes, "Oh, you must be the new boy." And I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Scully." And we had a really interesting talk staring forward at the urinal. And as we were walking out to our respective booths, he said, "Just be yourself and don't hold back." And man,
Yeah.
when I started becoming not trying to be interesting, so this is like what I tell my students at Marquette all the time: replace the ing with the ed. So instead of trying to be interesting, just try to be interested. And if you're interested in everything, like genuinely interested in the athletes, the leagues, the teams, the sports we're covering, and you're asking the right questions, you're going to have
Yeah.
this knowledge base this menu of things you're going to be able to use on the broadcast. And that's kind of where that started when the Golf Channel, I mean, it was a little dramatic from my perspective, but when they slammed the door and
Yep.
said, no, you stay where you are down here, kind of in the
Yep.
minor leagues. I'm in my 30s at that point, and I'm like, oh man, that's where it all changed, really.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna share some stuff that I think about you. And when I was working my way up, I had two amazing opportunities that stick with me that are tied to baseball. When I was a senior in college at Missouri, my senior project, and I pushed hard to get this. I got to sit in the booth in St. Louis with Harry Carey. That was my
Nice.
senior project, and I did that story. When I ended up in Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, Michigan, one of my first stories, first weeks on the job as a sports anchor, was to go to Detroit. I got to sit with Ernie Harwell, did a whole feature on them. Those are two of the best that ever did it because they were
Yeah.
unique and they had that. I'm going to tell you what I think your sticky factor is. I think number one, it's a unique calm. Number two, I think it's preparedness. It comes across in incredible ways, no matter what it is you're doing. There's a comfort factor that you provide to the listener or the viewer. And biggest of all, Brian, and I know a lot of people say this about you, it's a likability factor. You also have this art of understanding the moment, delivering the words, and then letting it play out. And to me, you've been phenomenal with the Brewers. Then you get the call in '08 to go be this part of Turner, right? Doing the playoff games and all that, catching breaks because of Ernie Johnson, right? Needing
Yeah.
a guy to fill in, as I understand, and all these opportunities. So to me, that's what I think it is. Do you believe in listening to what people say about you now that you have reached? Do you still seek critique?
Oh yeah, all the time. Like I'm constantly seeking that, talking. My agent. I've been with him 30 years, and he's a great guy, and he's good that way. And I like, again, I like to hear it as an athlete would, trying to fix his
Mm-hmm.
swing or work on his mechanics. So it doesn't bother me. Like I'm not married to my job. I mean, I love my job, and I will do it till I
Mm-hmm.
die. But also, it doesn't define me. So I'm. It's not the thing that either motivates me or depresses me if I fail, and I've had a lot of failures too, and the
Mm-hmm.
successes don't change the way that I approach anything. So of course, um, I want critiques, and even to this day, I'm 54 years old, and I'm constantly listening to myself. I basically have the same rhythm I did when I'd call a minor league game and I'd record it on a cassette tape and I'd pop it in my Honda Civic on the drive home. I don't have a cassette tape anymore, but MLB, or it's all very
Sure.
accessible. NBA, you can click on it and I listen I watch opens, I listen to highlights, I listen to game flow. Um, so yes, it's important that you keep doing that. It is the most uncomfortable part of this industry. And I tell my students that too. Like, it is no fun to sit there and have to watch yourself be vulnerable and exposed, and even when you know what you're thinking when you're saying some of these words, and maybe you're not coming up with the right words, or you're not trusting, all these things come up. But I will say, um, all the things that you said about me all goes to in my opinion, it still goes to the point where I'm stepping out of the center of the circle and I'm trying to serve, because none of that happens if I'm trying to be interesting. If I'm trying to come up with catchphrases, or especially on a live broadcast, that just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work. It really doesn't. Not for me anyway. So if I'm canning phrases, or I'm gonna lose that sense of wonder and a moment. Like, I've seen a shortstop make a play in the hole literally thousands of times. It doesn't mean it's not an amazing human feat, because
Mm-hmm.
99.999% of humanity can't do that. So
Right.
I still want to put myself in that place where that shortstop who just made that backhand pickup and that 130-foot throw, that's amazing. Like, that's an
Right.
extraordinary accomplishment. And I
Yeah.
don't want to lose that. And so I do have to remember, remind myself, like, that's incredible what we just saw, even though I've seen it. So for me, it's
Yeah.
constantly staying in the moment, which I think all the things on the edges, the leaves, let's
Yeah.
call that, like this tree, right? And the roots and the bark system, that's all the things that I'm worried about. And then what you're saying and what your feedback to me is the result, the leaves on the tree. But that's all because of just the study, the idea, the notion, stepping out of the
Yeah.
central, the most the guys and the people who are on the air that are the least likable are the ones who are constantly putting themselves in the middle, and they're the
Yeah.
story. And that's what I didn't like as a player. Or when I started listening, trying to learn this business, I moved so far away from that kind of announcer. Harry, you mentioned Harry Carey and Ernie Harwell. Harry was the master at that, just being in the moment and fully like
Mhm.
expressive and letting it fly and just feeling whatever he felt in the moment. Ernie
Yeah.
Harwell was a mentor of mine, and he was the first guy that called me when I got the Brewers job. He used to let me come sit with him when he was with the Tigers and I was still in the minor leagues. I would sit in the booth with him over a few years. And, I just watched Ernie just be this icon. And as soon as he was away from that microphone, he just blended in. He drifted into the wall. And he was
Yeah.
just generous with everybody and courteous. And he would
Amazing.
build people up. He was just such a saint. So that's kind of, Ernie Harwell was the guy that I watched be a servant every single moment of his life, on or off the air. And I'm like, all right, I think I want to be like that.
In addition to hosting this podcast, Kraig leads the Kann Advisory Group, focused on elevating communication for companies and individuals. Company consulting, team and individual workshops, mind-altering virtual programs. To learn more and to find out why the Elevate workshop has been labeled the most powerful experience in leadership communication, visit canadvisory.com. And when you do connect, mention the Tracks to Success podcast to receive your special discount. Now, back to the interview.
I talk a lot about brand. We're talking with Brian Anderson from Turner Sports, from the Milwaukee Brewers, and does a phenomenal job. March Madness as well. He's got all the calls. And in brand, Brian, I talk a lot about employees versus ambassadors who work for organizations. You got people who just show up, do the work, and they fill the role. You got other people who understand the story of the organization. They represent the organization. They are a brand ambassador. You serve a lot of different people, a lot of different bosses, a lot of different organizations. By that, I mean the NBA. By that, I mean the NCAA. By that, I mean the Brewers. By that, I mean the Phillies and the Braves, if you're going to call their game, et cetera, Major League Baseball. Do you feel a sense of ambassador for sports? Because you are not minor league anymore, man. You're big time. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, when I talk about all of the different areas that I serve, and I'm very intentional about, all right, all these quick decisions are coming rapidly. As the game's going on, when I'm off the air walking through the concourses or through the service level, those are those moments where you're like, okay, I could be a jerk here. I could ignore people or not. I could not be that way because I'm representing TNT Sports or I'm representing the company. If I'm on the air, we're representing Major League Baseball. But that's not to say you got to be passive about it either. I don't mind being honest about it as well. And I would say, like, and I've done corporate talks as well, and they're always, that this question comes up a lot. Loyalty and being an ambassador it goes both ways. And as an executive or a leader, if you're not doing that with your employees, if you're not standing up for your employees, if you're not recognizing those little things that they're doing successfully that maybe is a big thing to them, but you're not recognizing that, then you're not going to get that loyalty, and you're not going to get an employee who wants to be an ambassador for your company, because an employee can go find a job elsewhere. I can too, but the reason I've stayed with TNT Sports now, this is my 18th year, is because they've empowered me to stand up, say what I feel is best. Not that I haven't been cracked before or called to the principal's office, but also there's a trust there that, like, hey, man, you were a little bit down a side street. Maybe you could just word that a little differently, as opposed to, like, don't ever do that again. And if you do it again, you're fired. Like, I feel a lot of flexibility there, which ultimately means I can be honest with an audience which is, again, the most important thing we serve is the audience. So if you don't have a boss who's allowing you to be honest with an audience in our world, then you can't be, and then you just don't have that
Yeah.
respect. You don't have the authority to do it, and you're never going to get it. So, I'm pretty conservative by nature as far as like what I will say on the air, but there are times when you have to speak up, and it works both ways. And so I try to impress upon individuals, and TNT Sports is the best network I've ever worked for. And, I felt like a Golf Channel, they loved us as long as we didn't pop on the radar at all. If we just stayed
No
underground
doubt.
and
No
stayed under
doubt.
the blanket. But man, if you popped up on the radar at all, you didn't feel like they were always with you. This is a totally different regime than what's there now. But, when you and I were at Golf Channel, it was very much like stay in your lane, just
Yeah.
don't go out of that lane, and make sure. And it ended up like costing me my career there because I was doing that, and then now you become just a normal, average, generic voice. So that was,
Absolutely.
again, back to like why I changed. It's not even like a change. It's like, all right, just be more authentic, just be more yourself, but also with all those sensitivities of taking yourself out of the middle and serving all these people all the time. I mean, I would say I didn't serve an audience well when I was at Golf Channel because I was so busy just trying to not mess up, not screw up the 2 hours we were on the air or 5 hours we were on the air, whatever that was.
Looking for a guest speaker for your next event or annual conference? Kraig's message is inspiring and empowering. Visit kraigcanspeak.com to learn more about his topics and find out about his green shoe experience. It's a day your people will talk about long after he's gone. So visit kraigcanspeak.com and mention the Tracks to Success podcast to receive your special discount. Now, back to the show.
Really great to be with Brian Anderson. As he mentioned, we worked together at Golf Channel, and I respected him then. I respect him even more now. And I know that he is a pro at the art of the pivot. I've made a few myself. I think there's a lot of value in being able to handle that and do that. And I want to do a little quick thing before we start winding down here. Let's play quick answers, 30-second answers or less.
All right.
You're not a big self-promoter, Brian, or a social media magnet. Why?
Doesn't interest me. It feels self-serving. The only thing I'll promote on the air or on social media is when I'm on the air, our group is on the air, the games we're doing. And I mostly do that for my mother who follows me on Instagram. So I could text all my family or I could post it on Instagram, and then my mom will tell everybody on, her social channels when and where I'm on.
Okay. The travel. You're on a lot of planes. You're traveling to a lot of games. You're doing a lot of stuff, local, national, etc. Embrace the travel. I know you use it to your advantage, Wi-Fi to prepare and all that, but travel, love it, hate it.
Part of the job. I actually love the fact that I can be in Canada one day and in Milwaukee another day and then in Los Angeles. I love that concept. Again, every place I go, I kind of think about it as an opportunity to serve. So for me, it's not to be so philosophical and sappy, but I just try to help, the flight attendants, or like, I try not to be a burden. I try to calm situations down if I can. I try to help people in the airports how to get from one gate to the next or on a tram to the other, because I'm in there all the time. I know it like the back of my hand. So I end up like being an ambassador for the airport or the airline because I don't mind it. And it's like there's a little bit of a serenity when you sit down in a seat in an airplane and, you put your headsets on, put your noise cancellation headsets on.
Be very easy to ask you who your favorite broadcaster, sportscaster was that you looked up to, but I'm going to go a different direction. Analyst, this could be a Barkley question here. Most impactful who you've done work with that you just would say, man, this guy or this woman, I can't wait to spend time with them. Who is it? Analyst.
Yeah, well, that's on the list. I mean, Charles Barkley for sure. John McEnroe. I just worked with Johnny Mac and Jim Courier and Lindsay Davenport at the French Open. That was amazing just to be in their orbit. Bob Uecker, we weren't partners, but Bob Uecker was in the booth next to me and would often come over on television. And, he's such a legend, and we miss
Yeah.
him greatly. But just to be around him and travel with him and be on the buses with him, those were those moments where you're like, man, I can't believe I get to do what I do and be around people like that. But Stan Van Gundy is the guy that I love. And all the guys I work with, Jim Jackson and Reggie Miller, I can't, my partners with the Brewers and on baseball, I love all those guys, and each of them, they're all an amazing story because they've made it
Yeah.
on some level.
Yeah.
And so I'm fascinated always by the Ron Darlings and the Jeff Francoeurs and all those guys. So yeah, that's a hard one. I'd say Barkley's probably the guy though, because you just never know what's coming out of his mouth, and he's such a good dude, like just the best. And he is so generous and giving and just like teammate in it with you, but funny, calls you on your BS on or off the air. I love the guy, man, and really honored to call him a friend.
Last quick one. We know you're behind the mic often. What do you do? What's your favorite thing to do? I know you said family's huge for you, but what do you do? You fish? You play golf? What do you do? What do you like to do on days off?
Yeah, golf and tennis now. So I really started getting back into tennis when I was preparing for Roland Garros, and I'm really into it. I hadn't played it in 30 years, so I love it now. And so that's what I do. I still train and I want to be as competitive. I'm, playing for the tie at this point at 54 and all the body parts hurt. But I do like to play and compete. And I love golf. I mean, the golf trips with your buddies are just the greatest, some of my best memories with my dad and my brother are on the golf course. And, that's has nothing to do with you and I calling golf or being part of that ecosystem of televised golf, but just being on the golf course. It's such a cool thing. So I would say those are the main ones.
All right, couple of bigger ones before we go. You talked about ED versus ING. Interesting, interested. I love that. I wrote a book called Can You Get Our Attention? And I want to tie that to you. What would you tell people? You talked about Marquette and so forth and working with young broadcasters or others, getting attention. How do you get noticed? And you use the term authentic. Maybe this is a part of that. How do you get noticed? And what advice would you give to get noticed, no matter your career, in a world where there's so much competition and so much noise?
Well, that's the number one question that I get, and you probably get the same from, young men and women who want to do this job is how do I get noticed? And for me, this ties back to my experiences and kind of what I was telling you about Golf Channel. It's not, so I always took a very humble approach to my broadcasting. Just do the job in front of you. Don't worry about where you are in the lineup. Don't try to climb ladders. Don't back channel, backbite, all of that stuff. And there's plenty of that in our industry.
Yeah.
I will say, however, the other side of that is that you have to be confident enough in yourself and your ability to look face to face with an executive or on the phone or on a Zoom these days, and not to be so direct, but hold them accountable for your career as well. And that's one of the things that I learned, coming up, doing minor league baseball. I had done thousands of games. Like I had called so many, batted balls and pitched balls that I knew there wasn't much you could do in a baseball game that I hadn't seen. And for me, it was always like, well, I'll just wait for somebody somewhere to discover me and give me the job. And that's why I got stuck 9 years calling minor league baseball. And then not being elevated at Golf Channel. So there is a little bit of an element to, you have to, in a proper way, hold an executive accountable. And not until I started interacting with executives did I realize they have a job to do too. They have bosses too, but they're also human beings and you can connect on a different level. And it's okay to ask the question like, why not me? And that was the question I asked when the Golf Channel came to me and said, you're not going to be our choice to do the PGA Tour. I was upset, but I also said, why not? Tell me why. I want to hear the feedback.
Yeah.
And so that was really the first time I'd ever challenged an executive, ever. And, for me, to get noticed is kind of a tricky word because I think young broadcasters feel like they have to do something extraordinary to get noticed or be louder or come up with more interesting lines. Again, you be interested instead of interesting. You show up, you do the job, you do the grind, but also not discount the idea that you have to make relationships. You have to go in for knowledge with your bosses. What am I doing well? And then you got to be able to take that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really fit in the what can I do to get noticed, because I could probably say, well, if you were better at your job, you'd get noticed, right? And my brother used to always say this to me all the time. Remember, he was a minor league and then Major League Baseball player, and I'm stuck in Double-A as a broadcaster, and I'd complain to him, and he'd say, well, just start announcing better and get out of Double-A. Okay, so what does that mean, start announcing better? All right, well, let's break down all the layers. So it's not one thing to get noticed. You just have to pay attention to the whole picture, not just what you're doing on the air, your preparation, your own individual stuff. You got to make sure you are connecting with bosses, people are decision makers, and that might not even be somebody who's in that position now. Maybe it's somebody who you're just looking for feedback from. And it really probably boils down to just feedback, be able to take feedback, because so many can't. Like I give really hardcore feedback in my class at Marquette that I teach every fall. Man, there's I'd say 80% of the students in there, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to take it. And I didn't want to hear it either. But that was, I would say, the biggest difference is if you want to get noticed, an executive, you go ask for feedback, you get it, and then you respond off it. That's going to be a big way to get noticed.
Not only do people not sometimes like to hear it, but some executives don't really want to give you the real truth. And that's always bothered me. I expect a leader to be honest with me because my career matters to me, and I hope it mattered to them. They hired me in the first place. Last question. And I think I said this earlier. I admire your versatility. I struggled with that. I wanted to be known for one thing. I wanted to be a star at one thing in broadcasting, And so when I was doing all these different shows, and I'm going to talk about that more in just a few minutes, but I wanted to be known for one thing. Your versatility is incredible, and going from this to that to the other. So what haven't you done that fuels you to this point or at this point in your career? And what do you want your legacy to be when you hang it up and don't do it anymore?
Yeah, I've done everything and more that I've ever wanted to do. Obviously, I would love to call a World Series. I would love to call a Masters. Those are the two things, if I could snap my fingers and do, that would complete my career. But I don't need it to feel completed. I hope that makes sense. It'd be awesome to do a Masters or a World Series for sure. But my network doesn't have the World Series or the Masters, and I'm very happy with my network. So that's fine. It's totally okay. As far as all the sports, and I never sought out to do a bunch of sports. Again, I just said yes and figured it out. And so I really don't have a need or a hole to fill as far as that goes. Legacy is a tough one. I get asked that a lot too, and that truly is up to others, because what I really want people to say about me is that, man, he was a great teammate and he made everybody else better. And I mean that. Like, that's not a cliche answer to get a humble attaboy. Especially in our role as a play-by-play announcer, if your analyst on television is thriving and shining, everybody's going to shine. Yeah. Because if that analyst collapses and you're not necessarily providing him with the proper tee ups, or you're not cashing him in, then it all goes wrong for everybody, because those are the people that lead. And yes, we have famous play-by-play announcers. Joe Buck, you mentioned Mike Tirico. Those guys are famous play-by-play announcers, but their art, and I know both of those guys well and talk to them a lot. They're great at making sure their analyst shines. And
Yeah.
so then it goes back to, okay, how do you make sure the analyst shines? And you want that legacy to be, he was a great teammate. Well, how do you become a great teammate? Back it up by being interested.
Yeah.
By asking the questions, what makes this game or this player, this moment important to you? What can we go, where can we go next? And this is like moment to moment, pitch to pitch, play to play, commercial to commercial. It's not like today I'm going to be a good teammate. It's a daily walk. It's that tap on the rock every day. So that, I would say, if I had to pick a legacy, that would be it. But man, you don't just snap your fingers and get that. Like, you got to live that. Easy to say, hard to live. And, I do feel like there's a level of discipline in my career that I've always had, that I wanted to serve that person. I've mentioned that word a lot today, but it really is the most important thing. And then when you lose that, that's when you start getting the performance anxiety. That's when you start getting into comparative thinking. That's when you start, the ladder climbing part of that. That same place that occupies that spot in your brain, if you just replace that with service, then all that will fall away. And then whatever it is, just be what you are, and whatever that is, and fix whatever you think you can fix, and whatever you can't, leave the same. And it's just got to be okay. And if that means you top out as a Double-A Texas League play-by-play announcer, so be it. I never dreamed I would be doing all of this, but I also was not striving for it. I was just doing whatever I could the next day and trying to be a little bit better the next day. And I know that sounds very cliche, but I promise that's exactly how my career has gone. And I think people would look back, you knew me when, and then there were people who knew me when I was just a cameraman, and they'd be like, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm like, I know, me either. But this is 32 years into this business. And if I wasn't just elevating and growing and trying to be a little bit better tomorrow, then why do it? Go do something else.
You made this more than a little better. You made it a lot better this season by being a part of it. I really appreciate that. There are a lot of people that say, I have to do this. I have to be at this meeting. I have to do. I like to change the mindset and say we get to. And it sure feels like you feel in your career you get to do what you do. That's really cool. Brian, thanks so much. We'll talk down the road. Hope to see you at another big game.
Yeah, man. Always great to see you, Cannon.
Friends, success isn't just about the look of your resume. It's about the way you look, and dressing for success in the workplace is important. The way you look out of the workplace is part of your brand as well. Ahead, our official headwear partner, is all about helping you show off your best self. A hat says a lot about you. And Ahead doesn't just follow trends, they set them. Available at pro shops, resorts, and big sporting events around the country, and also online. By listening to this podcast, you get a chance to save big. Visit aheadusashop.com, use the code TTS30, and receive 30% off your order. That's aheadusashop.com, using the code TTS30. 30% off just for you. Ahead, the finest brand in headwear and the official headwear of Tracks to Success. Well, it's time for that segment I call Getting Ahead. And I want to talk about something that's tied to Brian's journey. The topic is versatility. And many times we actually want to be known or attached to one thing, right? We want to be a specialist, really good at something in particular that's identifiable. And I think that's not always the best recipe for long-term success. Here's my story. For years, I hosted multiple shows on the Golf Channel. I always wanted to be tied to one show that had my name on it. And while I love the idea that I could handle multiple things, they told me that anyway, I wanted to be attached to one thing to grow my brand. And years later, I wish I would have appreciated my versatility a little bit more. As I look back on it, the reason I was able to have a long career in television was because of being able to do multiple things. So, my message when we're talking about long term success comes with wide ranging skills that are attached to you. And while being known for something is important, the mindset that's really good is to be known to somebody who can kind of do it all. If you listen to Brian Anderson, he talked about that. He's one of the most talented broadcasters in the business. And why is he so busy? Well, it's because he can do so much so well. Every network seeks guys like Brian. They just can't always find them. So in your journey, believe in your talents and show people that you can handle many things, not just one. If you do that, your tracks to success will become a whole lot easier. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Brian. Until next time, I'm Kraig Kann. This is Tracks to Success, inspiring people, inspiring stories. We'll do it again.
Don't forget to subscribe to the show for more great interviews and Kraig's thoughts on reaching your highest personal and professional summit. Find it wherever you get your podcast and on the Kraig Kann YouTube channel and kraigcanspeak.com.